Well, the mobile sanding center project is all but finished. The drawer fronts are on, the finish has been applied, the laminate is on the top, and I've got a couple of my sanders up here even though I haven't bolted them down yet. But the last thing that we need to do is we need to deal with the dust. And to do that, we're going to build a dust collection manifold. And as long as we're doing that, we're going to throw in a couple of surprise extras. So let's go see what we need to do this project. Alright, to build the dust manifold for the mobile sanding center, just going to need a few bits and pieces to get going here. It is a dust collection and we're going to use 2.5-inch fittings because the ports on both my sanders are 2.5-inch. So we need some 2.5-inch hose, and got a few hose clamps here in case we need those. Got a couple of miscellaneous fittings. Got these blast gates. These are ABS plastic, 2.5-inch blast gates. Pretty cool. And also got a port for the back of the dust manifold where we'll actually be sucking the dust out. You can hook this up to a regular dust collection system by using an adapter, or you can hook this directly into a shop vac and it'll work fine. So the other thing we want to do is we want to make the dust collection manifold also the central location for the electrical power for the sanders that we'll use with the mobile sanding center. So I got a box. It's not exactly the box I was looking for, but I'm going to modify it a little bit and I'll show you how to do that. It'll work fine. This is what's called a 2-gang box, so it holds 2 pairs of receptacles, so we'll have 4 plugs in there. Got that, got the receptacles, got a cover plate for it, got a plug to put on the cable, and I got this nice cable here. This is very flexible. Got 12 feet of this, should be long enough to reach anywhere in my shop depending on which plug I go to. This is made with 12 gauge wires inside and they're stranded, so that's what makes it really flexible. 3 wires, of course, a ground, a positive, and a neutral. In addition to that, we're going to need a hacksaw blade, a 12-inch hacksaw blade, and then we're going to need some wood. Need a little bit of 3/4-inch plywood, and the original 3 sheets that were used to build the mobile sanding center, there should be plenty left over to do this part of the project. And going to need just a little bit more poplar for trim, and then we're good to go. So let's get cutting. Okay, now what I'm doing here is I'm ripping boards 5.5 inches wide, plywood. And you may notice that I'm orienting the grain this way. That's not really necessary, but this little box is going to be sitting on top of the mobile sanding center towards the back, and the grain in the mobile sanding center runs that way. So I thought I'd put the apparent grain of the plywood on the vacuum manifold the same direction. Okay, we need 2 pieces 10 inches long and 2 pieces 16 inches long. So I'm going to set up a stop block just to make sure that we get them exactly the same length. Alright, and the last thing that I want to do, I found a scrap of 1/2-inch plywood, but I want to cut 2 pieces out of this that are 8 9/16 inches. Alright, I put a little wax paper down in preparation for gluing up this box, but we're a long ways from doing that. We still have a little bit of work to do. What I've done is just mock this up just to get an idea of what it's going to look like. We've got the end pieces are covering the ends of this plywood. So the only edges of plywood that will be exposed will be the 2 edges here in the front and the 2 edges in the back. And we'll deal with that. Overall, this box is going to measure 17.5 inches by 10 inches. Inside are my scraps of 1/2-inch plywood. These are going to serve 2 purposes. They're going to help square the unit when we're gluing it up, but more importantly is we're going to drill and countersink a couple of holes here for mounting this box to the sanding center. Now, we have a lot of prep work left to go. We still need to drill access holes for the dust ports and for the electrical. So let's get started doing that. Okay, in this first board we need 2 holes, and then we're going to need a square cutout for the electrical. The 2 holes, the location for those 2 holes, 3 inches from the ends and 2 1/4 inches from the bottom. So I set my square at 3 inches and made marks on both ends. Now I've set my square on 2 1/4, and I'm going to make another mark, and that defines the center of the hole we're going to drill. And we're going to drill 2 1/2 inch holes through that. In this piece, we're also going to drill a 2 1/2 inch hole, but we want to put it dead center in this. So that's 8 3/4 inches because this is, it's 8 inches because this is 16 inches long. So we want to make a mark at 8 inches. And again, it'll be 2 1/4 inches up from the bottom. And the last hole that we want to drill is also 2 1/4 inches from the bottom, and it will be halfway across the end piece, which is 10 inches. So we'll be putting this hole at 5 inches from one of the other ends. Now while we're here, we're going to go ahead and take this one that has the 2 holes and mark out the square opening for the electrical, but we're going to cut all the holes first. Now the square opening will be 4 inches in height and 4 1/4 inches long, and we basically just want to center it on. 4 1/4 inches long, about 4 inches high. So that's perfect. We'll cut that out in a little bit, but we're going to go cut our holes first. All right, now what I like to do on particularly a large hole like this is I like to set my fence to determine one of the distances. In this case, I'm just determining the distance off, in this case, the top of this little board, or what will be the top. That way I don't have to worry about that dimension, and all I have to do is just set the hole to start at my crosshatch, and I'm ready to go. Unfortunately, with these really large Forstner bits, the laser system doesn't work. So if you just get down and look at where the point is contacting the wood, you'll have it set pretty good. Now these large Forstner bits, it's much better to run this on a real slow speed. And we're going to produce an awful lot of chips. And there's our first hole. Alright, so what I've done here is I've taken this board that needs the square cutout. While I was at the drill press drilling these holes, I just went ahead and put a hole in the middle of this square. I needed a starting hole for my jigsaw. And I've clamped this up on some riser blocks so the blade won't hit underneath. I want it to be nice and stable. I'm going to try to get as smooth a cut as possible. And you know the old inside the line, outside the line. Well, I want to cut right on the line and make sure I get a good fit for this electrical box. So I'm going to take it nice and slow. I'll probably have to move these clamps here and there to be able to negotiate the jigsaw around, but let's try to give it a try here. And there we go. Okay, while we're here, I'm going to put a little round over. This is the outside edge of the this side piece, and I want to put a little round over on these circles, and I'll show you why in just a second. And here's why we're doing that. These blast gates are molded plastic, and it's hard to mold an absolutely sharp inside corner. So you probably can't see it on the video, but there's a very slight curvature between this wall and this wall here. And if you push this into the hole, this doesn't go up flush, but by rounding this curve, now this will mount absolutely flush. So I'm going to round those other holes as well, and we're pretty much ready to glue this up. Now these are just butt joints, so we're going to kind of pour the glue on. It's going to be a little messy, but I got wax paper underneath, and we'll clean all that up later. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put glue on 3 edges of these mounting and squaring blocks in the bottom. Okay, that looks square. We're going to let that sit. Now we've got some other operations to do while that's drying. Alright, now this electrical box, this is not exactly what I was looking for, but we're going to modify it a little bit and it's going to work just fine. These have tabs that you break out and push the wire through, and then the tab will prevent the wire, it puts a friction fit on it and prevents the wire from pulling back out. Unfortunately, that would leave a very large gap around the wire, and we're going to have negative air pressure inside this vacuum dust collection box, inside the larger box, and we don't want the negative air pressure pulling dust in through the outlets. So we want to seal this up. So what I did was I cut a hole here. It's a 1/2 inch, and it's got a loose fit, but it fits okay. For my cord, I'm going to feed that through, a little extra here on the end, and I'm just going to loop this around and stuff it in here just to hold it in place temporarily. Then what I'm going to do is take clear silicone caulk. I'm going to caulk around that cord, and I'm going to caulk around the cracks in these access ports. Smooth this out. Make sure these are covered. Okay, so our electrical box is prepped. We're going to let that dry for a little while. Well, I decided to take a little break and let everything dry overnight. To see the completion of the dust manifold and power center for the mobile sanding center, please click on Part B. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.